My name's Webb president at Wonder Cave, and we have fun with these candid conversations. We meet with clients, peers, industry leaders, and partners to kind of find the connective tissue between technology, mobile communication, and civic engagement, the political world. And today, we've got a very special guest, Ryan Thompson. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Webb. Awesome to be here.
And we also have Godzilla behind us.
Thank God. Godzilla's watching over us, protecting this conversation.
I'm excited to dive in. Got a lot of fun things to talk about. The last couple conversations have been around specifically like focusing on data and just chatted with like a polling and kind of more research oriented client of ours. But I'm excited to kind of zoom out and talk about your experience on the campaign trail as an operative, now as like a digital strategist running kind of your own thing. So maybe to open it up then, I'll give a quick intro and use a little cheat sheet here. So Ryan Thompson, Chief Strategist, Blizzard TXT. Ryan, you have overseen some of the largest campaign digital programs in the country. Most recently served as the Chief Mobilization Officer for the Harris-Walz campaign and Biden-Harris reelect. Ryan was the DCCC's Chief Digital Officer in 2020. You created the program structure and tactics for the committee's grassroots fundraising texting program, which is still used today. And then in the 2022 cycle, Ryan was the Deputy Campaign Manager for Val Demings for U.S. Senate. Was that spot on?
Summary. Yeah, that was very spot on.
Okay, great.
All those titles sound so intense and amazing.
Well, you certainly, I mean, you earned it. That was you. But now, an exciting new chapter for you, Blizzard TXT. We'll obviously talk a lot about that, but the intro there is, it's a text messaging platform built for modern campaigns, movements, and the moments that matter, powered by SKDK, which that's an important note. We'll talk about that here in a minute too. But for those who don't know, SKDK is a leading communications and advertising firm. And so you all combine kind of the managed service from industry leaders with just kind of best in class technology. So an exciting chapter. But before we get to that, got to talk about your roots, where you got started in this whole political world. Because I'm a North Carolina boy.
NC.
So we gotta go all the way back to
Goldsboro, North Carolina,
Wayne County. So yeah, how did you get started?
This is fun. So I started in campaigns like a year and a half after college-ish. My best friend from college, she FaceTimed me. She had moved to North Carolina to work on a campaign, and I like loosely understood what that was, but was more of a student media, kind of like social media guy in college, less of a like, let's do the Obama campaign person. So it felt new. She FaceTimed me. She's like, hey, this job where it's a bunch of young people, they're dedicated, it's long hours, but you're really passionate about it, will be more interesting to you than the job that you were doing in Jacksonville, which is where I grew up, Jacksonville, Florida. That is important. I bring it up a lot. And so I, on a whim, a big part of my story is I grew up in my hometown. I went to college in my hometown. So I spent like 23 years living in the same place. And so I think it's that like early 20s, like, oh, I can move somewhere for a couple months for a job. Like that is in vogue at that age, I think. And come to find out that's in vogue for people who do campaigns. But so I took the risk and did it, and drove up from Jacksonville to Wilmington, North Carolina one afternoon. We like immediately it was like her final day off, even though it was August of the campaign, because back then campaigns, there's like no days off. And they emotionally feel like there's no days off either now. But we did this really sick trip to Asheville. So I got to see Asheville like immediately upon getting to North Carolina. And then I was turfed to Jacksonville, North Carolina. So I would tell people a really fun story of like, well, I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. Now I'm working in Onslow County in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and then got returfed to Goldsboro, North Carolina, where I did the bulk of my field organizing program and spent election day. And so, yeah, North Carolina, the battleground, the great North State of North Carolina is where I think I learned a lot of the a lot of the cultural side of running campaigns, like the big teams and all that, but also
Mhm.
the working in battleground races, purple seats, purple states, and what that means as you rise in your career in politics.
Yeah, it's funny when I was looking back, like you don't. It jumps out at me when I saw Goldsboro, North Carolina. I was like, we've got to talk about that.
Only a true North Carolinian knows the rich
ENC, man,
culture of Goldsboro, North
great
Carolina.
barbecue.
Yes.
So fast forward. We'll kind of jump, in between kind of your experience, but you go from really kind of diving in the field like that, kind of move your way into institutional organizations, and now kind of leading this new effort, this new platform that has taken all of that experience, and now you're kind of at the bleeding edge of like ushering some technology into it. So tell me about that. Like what led you to this new chapter, and what excites you about that?
Absolutely. Well, the technology expertise, interest, like really came from the D-Trip experience. So I was at the DCCC for 6 years. The cool lore there is I started in the most junior role in the digital department. 2 cycles later, I get promoted to the most senior role in our department. I was our chief digital officer, like you said earlier, in the 2020 cycle, right after our awesome 2018 cycle. We took back the House. We really expanded our digital program, I think, as Democrats, as congressional candidates, but I think as a party that cycle. And so getting to run cool programs there. And in the DCCC, there's so much, there's a big in-house emphasis, and so a lot of working with partners on building out technologies, or working with the very, very small dev teams that we had to build out just internal technologies, learning the language, all of that. I would maybe got too in the weeds of it. Like one of my colleagues and friends, he taught me how to make pull requests in GitHub. So I don't know,
Yeah.
just small exposure to different parts of technology. I think coming from the fundraising background where you're exercising HTML every day for email programs, you clue into that side. And I think throughout my experience there, I broadened out to broader electoral political strategy. But those early days of working in different technologies and calling ActBlue and asking for features, understanding how long that might take, understanding our different internal tools, how to build those, and how long that process is, I think is a lot of the same language that I use when we're talking about building out Blizzard TXT, or internally talking about Blizzard TXT, or with the dev team. And so I gotta say that experience is foundational, because you don't get in the weeds of the tech as much when you're deputy CM on a big Senate race, or even as the chief mobilization officer, when it's a lot of the team management of everybody's programs and rowing in the same direction. So that was foundational in the technology. And I think gave me the lexicon that I needed to talk to dev teams about, the goals of different political clients and other clients outside of politics, advocacy clients, companies, but and how to translate that into what this means in a product build and how it feels for the user. All of that was foundational. All of that, I grew all of that skill at the D-Trip.
And this is, we've talked about this too, kind of coming out of 2024, disappointing into that cycle on the left. And for you though, kind of saying, hey, with that disappointment though, is opportunity.
Yeah.
That I think Blizzard is, trying to be opportunistic about. Hey, we are a new technology looking to solve some challenges that might be carrying over from, years past. What are your thoughts there as you're kind of leading the charge on that? And you're kind of like a challenger platform in a space that has some kind of well-established players, but I feel like there are folks that have frustrations with the status quo, sounds like.
Absolutely. Establishment platforms who have features that I've asked for them to build and built them, right? So I feel what's cool about the texting space and the political, digital, technological space in the Democratic Party, the progressive movement, I've had a lot of front row access because of the microphone of the DCCC, because of the microphone of a ginormous Senate race, the microphone of being the vice presidents and the president's campaign. We've got to build a lot of features, and that taught me what people need in these texting programs to be successful. And the conventions of running text message programs, I think, that reach our voters, that reach our supporter base. Because again, like you nicely said, a lot of those tactics I established and our team established at the DCCC, and a lot of those tactics are used by their organization, by other organizations. We had, ran the biggest text programs for fundraising and voter contact on the Kamala Harris campaign. So the aperture of being able to run those big programs like gives you what the industry standard is, but also shows you the opening. And I think the punk rock entrepreneur thing to like challenge a lot of my friends who built the tools that are critical to the democratic ecosystem is like, providing a different offering. And also I think a different viewpoint into texting, maybe not just solely as like a field tactic or not solely as a fundraising tactic, but like, this partnership with SKDK, how are we talking to folks and thinking about it more of a communications tool, which I think sets us up differently than some of the other tools out there.
It's a great segue because I was going to ask about the partnership and the platform of SKDK kind of behind it. And even in your title, like chief strategist. So it's not simply just kind of running a technology platform. Like there is depth and experience that you're bringing to lock arms with clients. So what does that look like, kind of having the SKDK apparatus behind you that makes this like a unique offering?
The big part about having the SKDK apparatus is it gives us a baked-in client base, but also like a pretty diverse client base in terms of political offerings, but also non-political. SKDK serves a lot of different clients' communications needs. So it helps me, talk to prospective teams about this congressional race is doing this, or this Senate race is doing this, or here's what we're doing for a governor's campaign. And here's what we do overall for non-political clients to like have a brand win on an issue. And it's helping me like see bigger about how the texting work and selling a texting service fits in to folks. Just like I have an audience I need to reach, and I need the full menu of how I can reach them. And I think we uniquely can add to that service because SKDK traditionally would offer you, media strategy, press and communication strategy, digital strategy, of course, direct mail strategy. And now, with Blizzard TXT, the SKDK apparatus can add texting to that. And it's, the only service that is partnered with a big communications firm like that. And so I think that's what sets us up differently, but also gives us a level of credibility. I joke with people, I'm like, when I talk about that Blizzard TXT is powered by SKDK, I say, guys, I'm back at another establishment organization, DCCC, incumbent president and vice president's campaign, SKDK. So brands that are well known in the center left world. But it really does help, lend credibility to texting as a way to reach people and as like a communications tool. And I feel that we successfully like win that with the clients that we have, and then with the clients that we're bringing in.
Obviously, in politics, I don't come from politics. I come from communication technology and just so happened to kind of be running this platform that like serves this space. So it's been an education for me over the past 5 years, but you coming kind of like in the opposite direction, it's every couple years, it's just like, it's so fast and there's just like so much change happening because like, if you don't change, you're just obsolete, particularly around like the text channel. Now that you're running Blizzard, like what shifts have you seen of like the utility of text, or maybe some of the challenges, where it's working well, the hurdles to get over maybe now in 26 that was a bit different in 22, 24?
What's really cool about 26 is, and because Blizzard serves a bunch of different clients, is that folks use texting in different reasons, in different parts of their strategy than I've seen in the past. So, we have clients who I think, which is pretty exciting, use texting as like a part of their earned media strategy. And some folks want that, right? I think a big lesson coming out of Democrats' failure to win the election 2024 is like, okay, maybe we like misunderstand how to reach people. And I think that is the receptiveness of people, wanting different solutions to how to reach people or how to reimagine texting is perfect, a perfect reason to start up this adventure, but also to be able to run programs that look a little bit different. And so, in order to, we have a lot of conversations about how do you break through, and folks often, before they get to the part of their campaign where they're doing direct voter contact, want to break through their earned media message. And I think the texting programs that I find the most exciting are the clients that we have who do that and have enough budget or have enough belief in this as an outreach tool, a very inexpensive form of communication compared to like spinning up a TV ad or spinning up a YouTube buy, which is effective but expensive. If we have a message, we want supporters, but also folks who help shift narrative, some voters to see, why don't we text that out to people? And so I think that's been an effective use of the tool that I think it would have been hard. I know advocating for budget in some of these rooms, like in 2018, if we advocated for our texting program to be used that way, I think we would not have had the buy-in to do it. To your point, the cyclical nature of campaigns, but also just how the fast shifts in how Americans consume media and information, have allowed clients, different teams to run broader programs, and which allows us to successfully pitch to people that, you can text throughout the life cycle of your campaign, not just when you're doing your get out the vote program.
Not just like late money throw at
exactly,
it.
yeah.
Which it is true. I mean, like you were saying, it's, there's an opportunity to leverage it when inventory on other channels is out.
Yeah.
We can spin it up quickly, but it doesn't have to be just like dump here at the very end and it's just, we got money to spend, so let's just throw it at that.
Right.
Like there's some thought behind it.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, what have you seen in terms of, you were talking about like kind of the clients you're working with and 26 versus 24, like the messaging that is like resonating with people, or that like you're seeing kind of being leveraged more and more now to kind of like build back the coalitions or kind of reconnect with voters? Is there an element of like kind of authenticity from the campaigns, or what does that look like? What are people kind of elevating as their kind of messaging strategy that you think really can be leveraged over like a text channel where you have like a limited kind of view into what the campaign's trying to say?
Absolutely. I think what's working really well is supporter communication through text. I think we have on the Democratic Party a lot of candidates that are exciting, or a lot of elected leaders that are exciting, and people feel positively about our party's brand, and so supporter communications tend to be what different teams are seeing and different campaigns are seeing as like the best part of their program. Really low opt-out rates. Like a couple of our programs have like very excellent click-through rates. People want to hear, even though it's a channel, even though campaigns might run programs where folks aren't opted in, that group of supporters or voters or potential supporters like want to hear from them, which I think is something to nail down broadly, as people, might be zeroed in on their singular program, but should know is happening across our ecosystem. And I'm encouraged to see that work well. And I think that negates the arguments coming out of last year's campaign, which is people are like, oh, did we as Democrats text too much? And we couldn't have texted too much because we didn't win any of the federal offices, right? So I think like that is true. So I've been really excited to see that supporters want to hear from folks who are campaigns that are texting them, even though, a lot of operatives, maybe some consultants, maybe some folks in politics feel like they get a lot of text message marketing and that it feels overwhelming to them. But I think the like quantitative data shows us that there are certainly big groups of of voters across the country that, look to this form of communication as a way to get more information, a way to get involved with folks' campaigns, and certainly providing them information from campaigns that they're not hearing from other channels.
And you are very much like use media, like MMS.
Yes.
Picture,
yes.
like, yeah, image, video, right? Like that. I mean, nearly all of the messaging that you're running with clients is leveraging like some sort of media asset.
Absolutely. And it's, I'm, Webb has heard me say this a lot, but I'm a big proponent of A/B testing.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the texting programs I've run 18, 20, 22, 24 this cycle, the MMS is more persuasive, has better engagement rates over and over and over and over and over again. It's important to test your assumptions. So, I will proactively send clients like, all right, let's try an SMS, or let's try a longer text message that doesn't have a visual asset attached to it. And the MMS wins.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people, and it is true, that having an MMS asset, is it a graphic? We do fun GIFs for clients. Is it a short video? Is legitimately more persuasive. It's going to get people to take more actions. Sometimes the action you want them to take is to engage in a two-way conversation with you as a campaign. And so the data shows us this going back to 2017, 2018, and it is true, today in 2026.
On the two-way, what's an example of like a two-way conversation that a client has kind of like the track that they're going down communicating with a supporter?
So we have some clients running down ballot races that are still very important to our bench and to changing what leadership looks like, who are engaging in two-way conversations with voters to talk through their voting plans. So we're in primary season now. We luckily had some campaigns who were early in the primary calendar. We're still fairly early in the primary calendar. And that has been the biggest use of two-way in the Blizzard TXT programs. And, folks are what's interesting, Webb, is folks are bringing that because they've run two-way conversations in the past. And so that's kind of like their perspective of how to engage with people better. But also campaigns who have big volunteer bases want their volunteers to be able to do some stuff. And so volunteers, like, still to this day, as we all know, really like engaging in two ways. They like replying to the canned responses, maybe adjusting a response to feel more personal to them. And so, I'm seeing that kind of that trope of texting campaigns still exists to this day. And I think Blizzard TXT is cool because, we don't charge a bunch of extra dollars to engage in two-way. So we charge clients for their outbound text. And so folks really like it as like a cost-effective way to have a conversation with the voter, overlaying, if you're a campaign that doesn't have a lot of money to send flights of mail or, spin up a YouTube program, talking to voters is giving people that data in real time about how they think their election day is going to go. And so, I'm glad to see people use our two-way feature, and I'm glad to see them engage their in-person volunteers with that feature too.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned like the real-time data, really interesting, and it's like you get kind of like this signal back of, well, and I think the down ballot's important because I would submit there's an element of trust. Like if I'm receiving a text from someone who I know is more like representative of, where I live, where I'm from, versus a more like a national initiative is important, but I think there's some interplay where it's like, okay, I'm generating interest, excitement that ultimately is going to affect the entire ballot, but it's coming from someone who is kind of from where I reside or the things that I care about, like around my city. So it's interesting hearing about those clients who are doing that, and I feel like connecting with people, and it's great to hear that. I mean, it's the most ubiquitous channel, right? Like in communication, and people would much rather text back versus pick up a random phone call,
right? Or open their door.
Yeah, I mean, I know canvassing is still like you have to do it, but it certainly layers in pretty well to text.
Absolutely.
When there's just that trust element at play. And you were talking about like timing. We're still, early in the primary season. I'm curious, kind of on the flip side, we're talking about the kind of the upside, but what have you seen? Like, what mistakes made early in the cycle have been pretty detrimental to kind of running through the finish line?
I think we had as Democrats, like such a bumpy start to the cycle. Had to get our sea legs, had to like have some family conversations to create a path forward. I think the big thing for texting programs would be like folks probably didn't start imagining how to reach people through this channel really until like this calendar year, until the on year. And I think the end of last year too. I think we had exciting elections in November that sparked this Democratic enthusiasm from supporters I think you're still seeing today, which is cool that we have that sustained of level of enthusiasm. I've worked in election cycles where it goes up and down week by week. Presidential campaigns, man, they're a ride. But and so I think people now know, folks have budget to spend. Our Senate races had incredible Q1s in terms of their fundraising. And so, folks are willing to leverage tactics or pull spending up that they usually reserve to the end, which is an inventive yet modern way to reach people and to run campaigns. And so our slow start, Webb, was maybe like the mistake, but teams are catching up with that now.
It seems like fundraising is not an issue. It seems like fundraising numbers, like Democratic fundraising, seems like very strong.
Fundraising's been going great.
Yeah. And like grassroots fundraising too.
Grassroots fundraising. My expertise in fundraising is grassroots fundraising, text message fundraising, which we do for a couple clients, which is fun.
Info coming out of Act Blue is just like huge numbers, which obviously that's a signal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just like you were saying, like carrying that forward and leveraging that budget.
Absolutely. And you see it with all different types of campaigns. There's in the Twitter sphere, blue sky sphere, when someone launches a campaign, we all get a bunch of texts. It's kind of a good sign I think that's a like 1-2 play of earned media and fundraising to know someone launched their race. But so there's money to spend on fundraising texts in the launch budget, which there should be. I've launched campaigns where we texted day one, my Senate race in 2021 and 2022. And then, of course, when we relaunched the Kamala Harris campaign, a lot of texts were going out to help us have that explosive fundraising day and week on a random Sunday in July. And so, I think we've done a good job at texting early in the cycle for fundraising. Want to encourage our party and our movement to think about how we're reaching other audiences, not just a fundraising audience, earlier in the cycle, because that helps us shape a narrative, that helps people understand more about our candidates, our issues. And I think it just helps engage the populist voters better if we're having like a more sustained combo for people and layering in when to ask for money and when to talk to different audiences about your campaign and who you are and how you're going to be better than the other person.
So shifting gears a little bit, just got to talk about 2024 because what a year for you that was.
Crazy.
Like, what crazy. When did you make that jump into the like presidential campaign? At what point? I guess, and at that point it was Biden Harris. At what point did you get on board with that? Like what was the timing?
So I had the craziest first week of a job ever. I started in March of 2024. And what you should know is like the campaign ran a very skinny operation in the off year in 2023. It launched in April of 2023, very tight team, opened up a Wilmington, Delaware office. Some initial folks moved to Wilmington. And then in Q1, a lot more structure was built out on that campaign. Jenna O'Malley Dillon, our campaign chair, came from the White House to Wilmington. And so there was just the team was being brought out. And I think downstream of the team being brought out, I got the opportunity to run the mobilization department. And so my first week was wild on that campaign. The second day,
did you always know you wanted to be a part of a presidential?
Oh, yes.
That was a
yes.
like a big goal for you. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Because, my first presidential cycle in politics, I was at the DCCC. And, we would just watch the TV all day and like see what the Hillary campaign was doing. And I could understand that how the scale and scope of the digital team at the D-Trip in 2016 and what they were doing in Brooklyn on the Hillary campaign and the Trump campaign was just so much bigger than what we were doing. And I was like, that seems like a cool job. And then they really did convince me to stay in 2020. But after that successful midterm cycle, I was like, it would be fun to work for some of these senators on their campaign or for Joe Biden on his campaign, and stayed at the D-Trip. And then it was like on my Senate race, I was like, man, I gotta like get the trifecta of federal races and do this presidential. I will tell you, I moved from Orlando back to DC and spent a year like begging. I was like, Rob, when are you gonna hire like folks from the 2019 and 2020 Biden campaigns? Like, what's hiring looking like? Like, what's working for Joe Biden look like? Like, networked into that job. I think I like to tell people it's the second shortest job I ever had in politics, but it was the one that I networked into the longest and like auditioned for the longest, because started that journey December of 2022 and first day was like March 3rd or 4th, 2024. Wow. Yeah. So it took a while. My second day was Super Tuesday, very awesome day on the campaign. My fourth day was that awesome State of the Union speech where we like broke fundraising records for the campaign and engaged a bunch of volunteers. And to people who know our digital program, that campaign, I like made a guest appearance on our supporter live stream for the first time on that night. And I took the train, like we all did, took the train back from Wilmington, Delaware to DC because I hadn't moved up yet, but I was living in Airbnb that first week. And I was reflecting on
HQ.
HQ was in Wilmington, Delaware, because the president is a Delaware guy and lives like truly down the street from where that office is, which is wild.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Has a house there. And I took the train back to DC, a very Joe Biden thing to do. And I was just reflecting. I was like, that is for that to be the first week of someone's job, it's just like, what a week. Like, what a week of like, when the digital team really had to knock it out the park. What a week to be like, it is your first day and now you must like articulate at the 9 a.m. senior staff meeting, like what our digital strategy is for State of the Union. And like, it is your second day and this is the second time you're in this meeting. Like, what is your plan? And so that was cool and humbling. And, just a really explosive week on the campaign. I mean, that was our like most successful week on that campaign until the July 21st week of rebranding the campaign. Yeah. And so it was just, I think for the folks who had been on the campaign and had to go through that like Q1 slog and then enjoy that week, I'm sure they felt a way about it. But for that to be, the first, whatever the math is, 96 hours on the job, was very special.
After 2+ years of working toward like
probably
more time dreaming about it, obviously,
right? Yeah. And then it was real, and I was like, on that train, I was like pretty emotional. I was like, well, that was a pretty cool week of work.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you said like just the difference in scale, like operationally, from a mobilization standpoint, even like D-Trip, you're involved across the country, across all of the congressional map. Yeah. But there truly is like a noticeable scale difference.
There is a noticeable scale difference for two things, Webb. Like, not to disparage different levels of campaigns or official offices, but when you have the resources to run a bigger program, you just go like so much deeper. Like the fact that like by September, October of the Kamala Harris campaign, it's like I had a person who was like detailed out to specifically run our Instagram broadcast program. At the D-Trip, if someone had a job with that narrow of the focus, they'd be like, this person needs to do way more than that, right? And so it's like what was so cool is like just getting so deep in such a broad array of digital strategy, like the Twitch girlies and what they were doing, the Comedy HQ team and their explosive creativity that got like mentioned on SNL. Like, I think it's just like all of the our grassroots texting team and their operation of SMS and their operation of peer-to-peer to grow, our supporter universe. Like, just the creator team traveling across the country, engaging all these creators, bringing them to the DNC, like just the interesting small programs that added up to like what the mobilization department was doing is just such a different scope. And I always brag because I'm like, the party hires me when they need to like have someone run a big digital team, raise a lot of money online. And, I'm always like, I ran the biggest department at the DCCC. It was 33 people. On the presidential campaign, it was 177.
Wow.
And so it's just like the scale of that, the teams across the country on the presidential who are doing digital work, it's just the aperture is so much bigger. It is a different skill set than when I was, in different texting tools and just running the DCCC's programs.
Yeah.
But it is, every experience like led me up to being able to handle the stress of that, but also like to work with that many people's creativity on their programs, on their like outreach programs. And, when we were working for Joe Biden, like pushing forward the brand, even when the outside world didn't want us to win. And then we were working with Kamala Harris, like just like having this exciting, first time ever candidate.
Such a shift.
Yeah, such a shift. But the same people doing that work taught me a lot about our expertise in just like running different people's brands, So yeah, crazy year.
Yeah.
Rewarding year. And, the further you get away from the hard parts of campaigns, you look back at it, you laugh more and you're like, actually, that was like pretty cool.
Yeah. Couldn't sustain it like over years probably, but like, yeah, you can reflect back and be like, that was an incredible time.
Yeah. 8 months was a good amount of time to be on that job. That was
good for your heart to keep it at 8 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a cool journey though. 10 years of, right? Because that was 2014 in Goldsboro.
It was. And then August of 2014.
2024, you're all that. That's incredible.
Crazy. Great decade.
Great decade. I mean, it's like such cool experience. Curious. So just hot take for this year. If you could choose one issue that's going to decide these midterms, what do you think it's going to be? And I know there's an eternity between now and then. And news cycle, everything going on could change every week. But like, what do you think? Like, what would you say at this point?
I would say our ability to break through this issue of having strong and better plans for affordability. I do have to say, like, having as Democrats, we have the like cool policy position that like no one knows about, and facing the challenges of, winning that midterm in 2018, facing the challenges of pushing forward and keeping our Senate race optically competitive, pushing forward our brand in 2024, and now working with different Democratic clients on winning these midterms. It's like I think every cycle I've worked, we've probably, I would say, like had clear plans, better plans, did work to feel like we were distilling them in ways that people understood. And I think what was so clear about 2024 was like this issue and notion of like breaking that message through. And when we're working for Joe Biden, we're like, people like aren't hearing the accomplishments. Like, we know because we work in politics and we know how they're interesting, why they're interesting, why that administration had like just like it was a short run, but like had this iconic run with a lot of the bills that they got passed. What inspired me, a lot of the bills that they got passed in a bipartisan way, which I think more people needed to hear and understand, but also that was the challenge of like, how do we get people to hear that? So I think, yes, like our candidates, I think Democrats, in order to win, are going to talk a lot about affordability. I think you're hearing way more about affordability from candidates on the center right too, and I think in order to win, we'll need to make sure that our message breaks through. There's a lot of time between now in November. And so we feel good now, but having done this over and over and over again, I think having been so like bright-eyed in 2014, 2016, 2024, and taking the L's taught me to be optimistically cautious, but I think the candidates are clearly talking about their vision for affordability, being aggressive, being like timely with it, feeling like they're talking about those issues in ways that regular people talk about them. And then the candidates who are winning, Mr. Mamdani, Ms. Bamberger, Ms. Cheryl, like they're doing it, Mr. Tallarico, like they're doing it by breaking through that message. And so we're going to have to do that at scale, up and down, in order to win.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, a topic that can resonate across social issues.
Yeah.
But to your point, just has to be delivered in a way that's going to actually like captivate among all these other hot button topics that might not be as kind of coalition building, but can be very just like emotionally driven.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you like drive the emotion and what I think everyone would agree on? Like, I think 100% of Americans would be like, yeah, I'd love for a more affordable lifestyle, but how does that drive someone to go to the polls and like act on it?
Right. And do people believe it too?
Yeah. All right. Last one's a fun one and has nothing to do with anything we talked about. You've been a resident of DC for a while.
Yep.
And you live in town, very plugged in. Best late night food.
I'm gonna throw this out to I'm gonna give a big shout out to my friends at the Big Board.
Okay.
On 8th Street, my neighborhood, which is I think my dear friends will laugh and they'll be like, of course you said that. So here's why I want to make this plug. I'm a Floridian. I was friends with a bunch of like vegetarian vegans in college, and so now I've like maintained this like pescatarian diet. The Big Board has like catfish bites that just like slap after a couple of Mick Ultras and maybe a Jack and Diet after a long day. And late night, I'm older now, so like late night is like the kitchen closes at 10:30, but I don't know.
Right there with you. Yeah.
Right, you know what I mean? And so when I was younger in DC, those D-Trip days, like late night was 3 a.m. But and the pizza spots that like raised me. But I gotta throw it out to the Big Board for those catfish bites.
Okay.
Come to DC, eat those.
They
watch some sports. Fried
Okay.
catfish bites.
Awesome.
Makes me feel like I'm right back at home with the catfish and grits I grew up with on Saturdays. Like I love that. I think that's the only bar that like does that.
Do you dip?
So they have two things. They have this like really sweet sauce that you should dip in. And then lately we've been putting like their assortment of Tabascos and Cholulas with those catfish bites. So you get a sweet and spicy thing, which also I was telling someone the other day, I don't know how you prepare your catfish and grits, but I prepare mine mustard and hot sauce. So the tang and the vinegar is what does it. So yeah, catfish bites, the Big Board.
Awesome. I will remember that. Got to follow through on that next time.
Yes, we will.
Well, this was a lot of fun. Before we wrap up, maybe we'll, if you don't mind, kind of just a quick, who you work with at Blizzard TXT, how do folks find you, things like that.
Absolutely. Blizzard TXT, powered by SKDK. You can get in touch with us, blizzardtxt.com. Our website, that's pretty straightforward. I get all of the emails personally for people who submit to that website. We're both a strategy service for texting, but also a product that you can use. So we have managed service, self-service. A lot of clients like us because they want to use our very friendly tool, easy to use tool, disperse it to their volunteers to have two-way conversations with voters. And then folks come to us because given that we're powered by SKDK, the expertise of how texting fits into an overall communication strategy is beneficial to them. So blizzardtxt.com, learn more about us. Can't wait to work on your program with you.
Awesome. Thank you.